let's unbox and review this real quick. Let's do this. All right, quick unboxing real quick. Here is the new 8bitdo Pro 2 Bluetooth controller. This is a sequel to their previous one. Not much has changed from the last one. They do have a new color scheme here. I'm a big fan of 8bitdo. I use a lot of their controllers. As a matter of fact, I've got, like, for example, here is their M30 Bluetooth. I use quite often with my Switch. I use it pretty often with my Switch. I also use it with my Mister. It tends to work pretty well with the Bluetooth dongle. I also am a big fan of using it with the retro dongle. It's a USB dongle. It looks a lot like this one. This is their 2.4. I will show you. Here is one of their Bluetooth dongles that you can pair with this controller and with this one technically. As you can see here, it supports Switch right out of the box, and with Bluetooth, of course, it'll support Mac OS, Windows, Steam, Android, and Raspberry Pi. Pretty simple. Again, I'm a big fan of a lot of their products. I'm a big fan of this big boy right here. Here's their arcade stick, which has been fantastic. Again, actually, this dongle goes to this. This isn't the Bluetooth one, but it looks pretty much exactly the same. But I digress here. Let's go ahead and get to unboxing this bad boy right here. And their packaging has always been pretty good. Nice clean box here. And there it is right there. What's really nice about this is that it does have that retro look. If you're familiar with the, I guess it was the SN30, it was pretty much the exact same thing minus the handles, right? And they then extended it here. I can show you, this was their previous, this is the SN30 Pro Plus, as they call it, 8bitdo SN30 Pro Plus, and again, it was a mouthful. And this is the previous generation of this one. And honestly, there's not much of a change other than this button right here, which will allow you to have switch between profiles. So there are 3 different profiles that you can save. You can now load all of this, load the profiles. If you weren't familiar with this one, the great thing about this controller was that it had a, you can remap it using software, using 8bitdo's ultimate, wow, it's got a smudge there. Their ultimate software, which allowed you to kind of customize some of these buttons. So you can pretty much remap certain things. You can set, I had this, for example, this was, as opposed to being the home button, I had it set as the turbo button. No, I'm sorry, it was, I had this one set as the turbo button, this one over here, as opposed to the capture button, which allowed me to kind of press this and then hit a button, and then allowed me to set a lot of these buttons as turbo, which, you know, for games like Animal Crossing and just various other Switch games, allowed you to kind of repeatedly hit the button. It helped a lot when you're harvesting things in Animal Crossing, but what sucked is once you had it mapped, you couldn't unmap it without resyncing it to your computer and kind of changing the mapping. You didn't have profiles, whereas the new version does have profiles. So you can essentially do the same thing, but then if you want to have it back to default, you can hit a button and flip it over. As you can see, this version of the controller, the first one that I have, it's their Game Boy style. So you can see that it's kind of got the magenta buttons and the Game Boy style D-pad. And they've always been pretty good about releasing controllers in kind of a retro style. Here is one of their first ones that I've got. This is what's their 8bitdo NES 30. And again, this is very early on, and it's very small. It's a very nice pocketable controller, good D-pad, that sort of thing. Then they released this one right here, which is very good to play with things like the analog Noir or the NT Mini or the Noir or anything like that. Or if you've got an original NES, you can buy their retro dongle, which you can plug into the old original consoles and play that way. But this was, again, it's Bluetooth, so all of these will sync with a lot of their adapters. So if you want to plug it into a Switch and use this as a Switch controller, you can. They've also got a lot of 2.4 gigahertz ones that come with their own dongle. This one is made directly for the original NES, so this one has kind of a retro dongle you plug into it, and these are turbo and A and B, kind of really good to play original play on your original NES for sure. So that's, again, multiple controllers. My favorite go-to, honestly, they then made a lot of Super Nintendo style ones or Super Famicom ones with these buttons, but then this is my favorite go-to. And as you can see, this is kind of the same thing as these, right? Like, you can take a look that it's essentially the same controller minus the handles, and that was always the biggest problem with this one. This one's great to play on the Switch because it's got all the buttons you need for the Switch. It's got a home button, it's got a capture button, plus and minus, both sets of triggers, as opposed to this one that's only got one. And this is great for when you're wanting to play classic games, the SNES or NES games from the online version of the store. It's great virtual console style gaming, that sort of thing. I pair this very well with my Mister as well. You can also pair this with a lot of the classic consoles, but this one is really good because it's got analogs as well. So you want to play Street Fighter, you can. The problem is I've got big hands, you can see, and so like just kind of envelop this controller. So having this one was a great upgrade. It allowed you to fit it in your hand better. You had good grip, good triggers, as opposed to these smaller triggers. You can see the difference in size there. That's a big thing. Also, this had a rechargeable battery that was kind of removable. It's removable, so although I've never tried putting in regular batteries in here, it just comes with that one. These are also rechargeable, but you can't pull the battery out. One of the nice things, though, is that this particular controller, you can pair it with all the other things, Switch, D input, X input, Mac, and again, D input is direct input, kind of like a PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4 controller, and then X input would be what you'd use for PC, because it then turns it into kind of like an Xbox, the Xbox standard. You have to remember the key combination. So like, you have to hold, what was it? So you can see right here, to power it on, you have to hold Y and power as you're holding it, and that would put it into switch mode. So hold Y and then hold down the start button, and it would blink with one light. That meant that was for switch. But it was hard to remember all of these key commands if you didn't have the sticker. And notice that there's no sticker down here, so you didn't remember. So I kind of always leave this one in switch mode, which is great. But this one, here's the new one, and again, they kind of gave this kind of a weird PlayStation color scheme, which is weird, but you know, whatever, it works. The new features, again, is it's got a little grip, as a kind of, it's a little grippier compared to this one. It doesn't. This one's a little it's smooth in the back. I don't know if you can see that, the texture. This one has got like kind of a grip. But here's the awesome part: the switch right here, allowing you to switch between A, Android, O, I guess it's I don't know what O means, right? So it's no, I guess that's D, right? Yeah, it's D. So it's a direct input and then X input. There we go. And then it gives you 2 more extra buttons to remap. I haven't tested it out yet. I mean, obviously this is an unboxing to kind of try it out, but that's a great thing to do. Make it a physical switch, not having to guess which mode was what with the blinking lights. An example here, look, if you hold Y and start to turn it on, that puts it in switch pairing mode. But if you hold down the start button here to turn it off again, there it's off. If you held down X and then start, you had 2 buttons light up. And if you didn't remember what that meant, you were kind of, it just made it hard every time you wanted to move this controller around your different consoles, your different devices. So that's a big bonus to that. So right now, it's sitting there and it's looking for, and again, I don't even remember what is X input. It's universal, so that was X input. X, holding down X and start would put in an X input, so that would allow you to kind of pair it with a PC. So that would be what you would do for Steam, for your PlayStation. I mean, for your PC, for Steam, all that sort of thing. And D input would be for PlayStation 3 with a dongle, or PlayStation 4 with that dongle, so it acts like a DualShock 4. And then Mac OS, Android. So I guess the Android mode would be the Mac OS. I don't know. It's weird. It's funny because you can plug in a lot of you can plug an Xbox controller into Mac OS. I'm guessing each one of those modes has probably different latency, different ways that it reacts to certain things, the way it uses the analog sticks, that sort of thing. But I love this controller. This is my favorite. This is my go-to pro controller for the Switch. So I'm excited to try this one out. I'm going to give a better idea of what it is after I try it out a little more. But for now, it feels identical to this one. So both of these are great controllers. Feeling so far, the buttons feel about the same. The triggers feel the same. The best part is going to be being able to switch between inputs here, going from the 3. I guess it's 4. There's a default one, and then profile 1, 2, and 3. So I guess 0, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, however number scheme you're going to go through, and being able to map these controls. So that'd be nice to map some of these. They do feel like I might hit them on accident quite often. I tend to do that with a lot of the extra buttons on like the Elite. I have an Elite controller, and I actually don't use a lot of the back buttons on the Elite because I feel like my grip will hit it. Although this would be great for, maybe I think you can do macros, so you can set combinations, especially if you're doing a lot of repetitive tasks. You can just hit a button there and it does it for you. So that's a pretty cool feature. I'm gonna have to try it out a little more and kind of give a how it feels, that sort of thing. But for now, if it's judging from their pedigree here, they have always been pretty good at controllers. They are my go-to third party, and honestly, I treat them more almost like a first party controller. If 8bitdo puts out a controller, I honestly want it. So this was the moment that I saw it, they had announced a number 2. I immediately purchased it. I needed to see how it felt and see if it improved upon it. And plus, now it's nice to have 2 of these. So essentially this can be my second player controller, my first player controller, that sort of thing. So I will give my impressions further along. So let's talk a little bit about some of the features that it has. Within gameplay, of course, and I've got it right now hooked up to my Switch. What's nice, of course, is it does have USB. So when you plug it in, you can use it wired. Just make sure that under settings on your Switch, you actually have, and most people tend to forget this, Pro Controller wired communication. If you have this turned on, you won't get NFC, but of course this controller doesn't have an NFC reader in it anyway, so there's no loss there. Of course, you'll notice that I've got one of the lights turned on here, and I'll explain that in a minute. You can actually flip it to off or on. Actually, what that means is profile 0, I guess, is the what I'm looking at here, and then profile 1. It doesn't really name them. It just first light, second light, third light, and no profile, I guess. But I've got my USB cable plugged in, and if I plug it in here, you'll notice under controller it now says USB as opposed to wireless. But see, if I unplug it, it goes back to wired. There we go. Detects as a Pro controller. If I plug it in wired, it's now charging, and it's a USB. So pretty neat. I was testing this out last night, and playing some good 2D games, and again, just running through here, Monster Boy. What's nice about this is here's one of the features, right? So what I went ahead and did is I mapped this button to turbo, and when you hold the key down, so there's punch, you can see there's the punch attack. If I hold that down and then hit the turbo button, so at any point in time, I can make any of the keys turbo. So if I want the jump button to be turbo, I hold B down, hit the turbo button, and now it's a turbo button. If I want to turn that off, you just hold it down again and then hit the turbo button. So now it's off. And I don't lose any of the functionalities. So that's still a home button. This is still a capture button. And all the triggers work pretty good. D-pad is nice and tight. Again, if you're used to any of 8bitdo's, 8bitdo, however you want to say it, their D-pad, it's really responsive. For fighting games, they tend to work pretty well with like all of the inputs and whatnot. So let's go back out here and let's try it on some classic gaming, of course, and that's usually where you want it to shine, right? All right, so we've got Super Mario 1 loaded up here, and by default, the Y key, see, I've still got it set to turbo here for Y, so we don't want to do that. So let's hold down the Y button here and turn off turbo. So now, I always thought All-Star was a little too floaty. It's a little floatier than the normal games on NES. But you know, there's a lot of games out there that people like to test for usage. Mario All Stars is not my favorite. I would prefer testing it on, there we go, on the regular NES. But then again, emulation's already got its own set of lag that you kind of got to get used to. This is not my preferred way of playing SNES and NES. It's nice for a novelty, but I can really tell the floatiness and the kind of the delay of the emulation. I'm picky that way. But, you know, we can try as well. So City Connection is nice because it's pretty precise about inputs here. So like you see, you have to fill in the end there. It's one of my favorite NES games, just because. Oh, safe. I always dug the track. I always dug the style. You know, simple games of just filling in. Oh, come on, go away. There we go. Nope, can't hit that. And again, for games that are kind of twitchy, and of course for a good D-pad and you really need it, I always thought the Joy-Con, you know, for D-pad is not very good, of course, and having something like this available for something like Pac-Man 99 is fantastic. Oh, there we go. Got under 50. Haven't. And it gets hard to play while you're filming, of course. You're like looking at the camera up here, making sure you stay in frame, that sort of thing. So. So again, just a final outcome here. Is this a controller for you? I don't know. I think the price point is pretty good. I think at $49.99, if I'm not mistaken, on Amazon. It provides a lot of features, programmable profiles, being able to map these two rear buttons to anything you want, being able to map it to turbo, being able to set macros. So you can, if you want to set it up to do very rudimentary tasks, like, you know, forward B, forward, and then you map it, it'll remember that macro, and when you hit that button, it'll just do it. So maybe some mundane tasks for Animal Crossing, things that you do a lot of repetitive things to, like maybe a sell. So if you maybe move to the right and then hit a B to like sell something, you can just kind of clear out your whole inventory by mapping out a full set of tasks. It's a great controller. I think it's small improvements from this one, but I think it's just the nitpicks that this one had. Not being able to have multiple profiles, not having an extra key on here, so that if you wanted to map a turbo key, you would have to replace one of the keys, which was always my gripe. And so this one right here, I would replace it as the turbo key, and which meant that this was not, I'm sorry, this is the turbo key, which meant that this one was not the capture button anymore, which means that if I was playing something like Animal Crossing where, you know, I join up with friends and want to take some pictures, I couldn't. I had to either switch controllers or had to go in and reprogram this to not have turbo. There wasn't a way to toggle on or off, which is always a big negative side. But all in all, it was still a great controller. It felt great, good analogs, no drift, you know, push down. If you're used to, you know, the analogs of something like a Xbox One controller, they feel very similar. As a matter of fact, they're a little looser than your original Xbox One, but you know, that's beside the point. They're still pretty good for analog use. They're taller than the Switch ones, of course, and they've got the lip of the Xbox ones as opposed to the Switch Pro Controller one, which I'm not a big fan of. Some people are. But again, having two of these, of course, is great for me. At this point, this one is an improvement and will be my go-to controller from here on out. All right. Well, thanks for watching. If you've got any more questions or whatnot, leave them down at the comments below. Like, subscribe. This won't be the first one I do. I've done a few videos like this before, never really gotten them out, but this will be kind of a change. I've got a couple of things that I want to talk about. And again, watch us on Tuesday nights. Take care.